Hey everyone, welcome to Clickheads. I'm Eddie the Chump, and today we're going to talk about Riot's recent ranked announcement, as well as some more details concerning Viper's imminent buffs that were revealed by Morello on his stream last night, and how this fits in with other information garnered from the second part of his interview with Hitscan. There's quite a lot to get through, so let's just crack on. So first things first, as of very recently, Riot put out a blog post covering ranked mode that will be coming this week. I'll explain the most important parts to you right now. Senior producer Ian Bright Eyes Fielding had this to say: "It's worth noting that this rank system is a living work in progress, so don't stop your comments. Expect us to continue making improvements based on your feedback. Changes for launch: updated rank iconography and top rank name, easier to play with friends, and soon after patch 1.02, rank progression." He continues with, "We knew going into closed beta we wanted to take another pass at rank iconography, and taking your feedback into account, we've made the following changes. Clarity pass for rank colors so it's easier to distinguish between each rank, and visual polish pass for each match rating. Additionally, although we still really like having our top rank be something unique to our game and aligned with our IP, we've decided to remove Valorant as the name of our top rank to help reduce potential confusions of the game versus the rank. The new name for our top rank will represent agents infused with powers known as Radiant." Well, here's my initial thoughts to all of that. I way prefer these new ranking symbols. I think they look way nicer, and to be fair, the new top rank name change needed to happen as it was too confusing. Let's move on. Placement matches and pre-mades. We really believe in Valorant team play, playing and competing with your friends, so we've made it easier to play with teammates in placements, and will continue to work to further optimize for balanced matches, regardless of your pre-made size. This is an ongoing commitment from us. You can now matchmake with your friends during placements even if they have a fairly large skill discrepancy, to a certain extent. For example, if you're an elite player and your friend is still learning the ropes, our competitive matchmaking will still prevent you from being able to queue in order to protect the competitive integrity and experience for the other players in that match. We are also continuing to optimize our matchmaking to ensure that, regardless of your pre-made size, you are put into fair and balanced matches. By the end of closed beta, we were narrowing in on matches being about 50-50 fairness for the vast majority of skill groups, outside of our most elite players in our top 2 ranks. For Immortal and Radiant players, we've made some improvements to our matchmaking, but we know that for this specific tier of play, there is still a slight advantage to being in a 5-stack versus playing solo in these top ranks. We are looking into tactics to help address this problem and plan to share more later this year. Okay, so some fairly big stuff in there. Essentially, while you're placing, the skill discrepancy limits are eased off a bit. Not in extreme cases, but enough so that your friendship groups can stay together. Once that's done and you're in ranked proper, they don't state this, but I guess that the 6 rank limit is still in place, and that they've made tweaks to the matchmaker so that parties of all sizes have access to matches as close to 50-50 win chance as possible. They do acknowledge though that in the top 2 ranks, Immortal and Radiant, despite making improvements to that matchmaker, there is still going to be an advantage to those that pre-make compared to those that don't. As they say, they're looking into solutions, but they don't have anything firm right now. Now, I do know that a lot of players are mad at the fact that playing in teams feels more viable than a genuine solo queue. I feel differently. I think playing in teams is how you should play a team-based game, but I understand why people feel the way they do. This detail, though, I don't think is going to change. Riot have a clear idea of how they want the ranked mode to work, and catering to solo players specifically is not what they have in mind. I know this will create some very strong feelings, but at least personally I want to play the system before I cast final judgment. For the time being, let's move on. Rank progression. In every Valorant act, which spans about 2 months, you'll have the opportunity to track your rank progress throughout the act. We will start tracking your ranked progress as soon as we launch competitive with patch 1.02 behind the scenes, and soon after we will be providing you visible info in your match history, and eventually in other locations in the client, around your overall performance for the act. Rank progress we are looking at tracking are stats such as how you've climbed in rank over the act, your number of wins, along with your wins at your highest achieved rank. Now, this is something that everyone can get behind. I love stats. I love seeing how I'm improving or throwing as I'm playing, and I'm really glad to see that we're getting essentially ranked seasons linked to the acts in the game, of which our current one, Ignition, is only the first. Advanced stat tracking is a feature users like, and it blows my mind that usually it's third-party solutions that are left to carry this demand. Hopefully, Valorant develops a suite that's really good the longer we carry on. Fingers crossed. Next up, the Beyond. We've seen a ton of demand for competitive related features that support teams, in-client tournaments, fairer overtime handling, and more granular top-rank comparisons, such as leaderboards. For now, we are primarily focused on getting competitive matchmaking globally launched. However, we do want to eventually address these needs. Our vision for the future highlights team play as a critical part of the Valorant competitive ecosystem. We want to create the opportunity for all players to come together and compete at high stakes as a team, with the hope these team-oriented competitive matches will be memorable and rewarding events. Expect to hear more on this topic later in 2020. So yet more confirmation that Riot really do see Valorant as a team experience. A lot of the features we talk about on this channel as wishlist items, such as in-client tournaments, leaderboards, top 500 like tiers for the very top, etc., are as close to being confirmed without actually being confirmed as you can get. If most of these do turn up, Valorant Ranked could be a great experience. For the meantime, Ranked will look quite similar to how it did in the beta, which will be a bit disappointing for some, but take comfort in the fact that Riot have heard what we've all said and are working on it. To be honest, I just can't wait to get out of unrated. So moving on Morello's stream from last night, he gave us a sneak peek at the changes Riot are making to Viper to bring her power level more in line with the rest of the cast, according to their data. There's a short clip which I'll play for you right now.
Yes, Icy Flow. So the two changes I'm willing to talk about is the snakebite thing, and we're gonna allow her her wall to be shot through walls. That you can just pierce it through the map, and it'll just leave valves everywhere along the way. So that's going to allow her a ton of new wall placement opportunities. That wall is fucking crazy strong. There may need to be more after it, but in part of our easing into balance, we think this is a very critical buff, and think when that happens, when that comes out, we need to see how she lands afterwards, because it's a very substantial change. And between that and the snakebite buff applying fragile, I think she'll be a lot more potent.
So coming in the patch this week, Viper will be able to place her wall through objects that she couldn't before, which will allow her to make better use of that particular utility. Presently, there are some harsh limitations of where she can place it, as the power of a wall that could potentially cut off entrances to two sites at the same time should not be underestimated. From my perspective though, this will make her stronger, but I'll wait to see just how potent it ends up being. I have some reservations about the actual effects of walls that you can pass through very quickly without too much loss of sight. Phoenix has this problem too, I feel. Yes, these abilities do block line of sight, but passing through them doesn't have the same threat to the player level of, say, walking through a brim smoke. I could be very, very wrong about this. We could be sat here in just over a week's time talking about how overpowered Viper is now, but for the moment, I'm a bit skeptical. The fragile change, however, is quite significant. There are times where Molly utility is very dangerous, even a short duration one like Phoenix's, if it's in the right place. Especially as in this game, unlike CS, you can stack dot damage area denial within smokes. Fragile, according to Morello, will increase incoming damage values from all sources to an affected target. That could be very, very strong. The choice to go through a molly or not can be quite easy to make for a player, I feel. By taking the risk, do you have a high percentage chance of being rewarded? That risk is determined by the size, duration, and placement of the molly. Brim's molly is very, very large. Going through it will hurt a lot. Viper's molly, now making you take more damage as well as actually damaging you, could be massive. It could be a don't ever make that play kind of thing. The scale of the incoming damage buff isn't yet known, but even if it's like 25%, which I would consider conservative, that still would be very good. We'll know a lot more very soon, as the patch and its notes are coming sometime this week. With Morello choosing to share this info a little bit early, my guess is that it's sooner rather than later. So how good will Viper be after this change? Well, this gives me a neat segue into some of the other thoughts Morello shared with Hitscan in their interview, the link to which will be in the description. In this interview, they discuss many things, but to cover the parts that affect the Viper discussion first, Morello talked about power creep and balance as concepts. He noted power creep is a huge problem in League and a massive problem in a game like Overwatch, so they're very aware of how it could impact their game. They want to keep the best identities of agents like Brim, as say the Premier Burst Execute agent, or even Sage as the Premier Staller, but they're making changes to try and splash around the utility to even out the power level. Comparative balance, you could say. I would argue you can see this influence in Omen's recent changes and the upcoming ones to Viper too. They've made the point very clear a few times that they do want competition for roles in this game without everything getting out of hand. which is what you would call power creep. They decided to nerf Cypher's cages and their slow effect precisely because they were too strong in the stall department, as an example. One interesting thing he expressed is that Riot already think they know what is too good or too bad ahead of time, but that they wait for the community to pick up on things and address it if it really becomes a problem. I think we can take a look at the fairly swift changes to Razor's kit near her release to see that as true. I was convinced at the time that in principle she wasn't OP, but how she accessed her kit might have needed a bit of tuning, which is presumably exactly what they thought too, as they were quick to change it once that agent had contact with a big player base. With the same thinking, they knew Viper was performing weaker and was actually out of line statistically, hence why she's getting buffs now. As he noted in his stream, Riot as a group like to ease in with buffs to make sure something doesn't completely take over, and that the Viper changes we're going to see are a reflection of that process. Presumably, and I don't want to put words in Morello's mouth, but if the changes prove to not be enough to bring Viper in line, they already have ideas of how they would further buff her. I think that's a reasonable guess. They have shown they're not afraid to nerf the same thing over and over again repeatedly, Sage being a prime example, so I think the same would be true in the other direction if it was really needed. The rest of the interview did talk about some really interesting things besides Viper, such as bold new mechanics coming in future agents, with Reyna being the first in this direction, and the fact that having 11 agents at release was a conservative choice on their part, in part to establish the gameplay fundamentals with the player base. Now, all of you who watch this channel know by now how much of a Reyna fan I am, so if new agents are going to be as interestingly tuned as she is, I can't wait to see them. Wow, that really was quite a lot of info, and that's about it for today. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you like the content on this channel, please hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you get notified when we upload. Also, please check out our Facebook stream. We are no-lifing Valorant, and it would be great to see some of you in the chat. Until next time.